continuous improvement is better than delayed perfection. And I like that quote just because it's something that early on in my lean journey that I struggle with, trying to boil the ocean, as people will say from time to time. So I keep that one kind of posted up on my wall in my office just to remember that, old adage, better not perfect.
Today I'm excited to welcome Tyler Athey to the show. Now Tyler and I exchanged a few emails before we came onto the show and kind of brainstorming some ideas for what to talk about. And he kept coming back to he had more questions for me than he wanted me to ask him. You see, Tyler's been practicing lean for just a few years, and he's in his 20s and kind of out of school recently and just kind of learning his way. But as you'll hear, he knows a lot more than he was letting on. He has done quite a lot in just a few years of being out of college. So really the first part of this episode is just hearing more about his journey. He's had some interesting experiences with different industries, and we actually kind of geeked out a little bit on some of the kanban systems that he was working in and at his previous company. And then we kind of transitioned into more of he was interviewing me. He was asking me quite a few questions, on various things that he was wondering about and struggling with. And I did my best to provide some answers. And a lot of it, as you probably guessed, resulted in me really preaching about the power and effectiveness of scientific thinking. And so it'll be interesting to follow Tyler's career over the coming years. Really nice guy, and I enjoyed talking to him. So show notes for this episode can be found over at gembapodcast.com. Just look for episode 262. Again, gembapodcast.com, and look for episode 262. Okay, enough from me. Let's get to the show. All right, Tyler, welcome to the show. How's it going?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Ron. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you. All right. Well, so I think today will be an interesting podcast. I got some questions for you that I definitely want to explore, but sounds like you might have a few questions for me. So maybe we'll turn the tables and let you take over towards the end. How's that sound?
That sounds excellent.
Okay, good. So as you know, Tyler, I know you listen to the show. We like to begin with our guest sharing a quote. Do you have one?
I actually have a couple for you.
Okay.
So my first one, an old and a simple quote from Mark Twain: "Continuous improvement is better than delayed perfection." And I like that quote just because it's something that early on in my lean journey that I struggle with, trying to boil the ocean, as people will say from time to time. So I keep that one kind of posted up on my wall in my office just to remember that the old adage, better not perfect. That we just have to keep making continual little strides and not try to become perfect overnight.
Love it.
And the second one is not necessarily related to lean, but something that's been a great quote in my life. I know another question you used to ask towards the end of your shows was, what's something that inspired you? And I think maybe this is a quote that inspired me. It's from Richard Branson. It's, "If someone offers you an amazing opportunity, but you aren't sure if you can do it, say yes, and then learn how to do it later." Mm-hmm. So there's been a few times in my life that I kind of took that advice and took a couple of leaps, and it led to some pretty cool things.
Very good. I like that one. All right. Well, Tyler, let's kind of jump in and hear a little bit more about yourself. I'm curious how you first got started with lean, and just really kind of catch us up to speed to where you're at present day.
Sure. Yeah. So it all started actually back in would have been 2014. I was a junior in college, and I was looking for an internship, as many juniors are, and I came across this one internship, which was it's called an industrial engineer, and my background is actually in mechanical engineering, so I wasn't really sure exactly what an industrial engineer did, but I read through the job description, and a lot of the job description had this talk of continuous improvement on it, and being a mechanical engineer, I had no idea what lean was or what continuous improvement was, but this was probably the first Richard Branson quote in my life where I said, "Oh yeah, what, I can do this." And I went in, I had the interview, and I ended up being offered the role, and within that role, then I started to learn about continuous improvement, and half of my role was more like 3D machine design. The other half was out on the floor working with the people, trying to help them solve their problems. We implemented a water spider, just trying to reduce waste for that company, and coming out of that role, I really realized that I didn't really like sitting behind my desk that much doing CAD drawings. I really enjoyed that role of being out and helping the people and interacting with the people, and it quickly became something that really clicked with me and something that I really understood. So coming out of that role then and graduating college, I decided to try to explore roles more on this continuous improvement side, which my first role then out of college was a lean project manager role with a pharmaceutical or biopharmaceutical product testing lab, actually. So they were just beginning their lean journey. So I was with them for about 3 years trying to help them build their lean culture. Spent some time implementing kanban systems for them, trying to make sure we had material at point of use. One of their biggest opportunities was just they spent about a quarter of their time just walking around looking for things, trying to find glassware, trying to find different consumables. So, bringing their material to point of use and setting up these kanban systems to make sure they always had what they had, where they needed it, when they needed it was huge for them. And also just trying to help build up that culture. Started teaching some classes as well. So I actually took a 5-day a lean training class that was offered by our parent company's corporate lean office. And when I came back from that, the president of our company said, how would you like to maybe scale that down to a 2 or 3 day class and teach everybody in the lab? And here comes my second Richard Branson moment as a shy mechanical engineer. I was like, oh, sure, I can do this. And then I walked out of that meeting like, what did I just sign myself up for? Getting in front of people and talking was definitely, and still definitely isn't my strongest attribute. So, but that actually turned out really well. I think that is teaching those classes. It was just a introductory course to lean, just teaching value stream mapping, 5S, what the wastes are, things like that. I think teaching those things really helped solidify some of my knowledge of some of those basic concepts. And I think that was definitely a tool, and that training was something that really went a long way for us helping to start build that culture at the lab. And then so I was there for 3 years, and then now I am at a company that manufactures industrial automation and industrial networking products, and I've been with this company for about 9 months now.
Very good.
Yeah, so that's where I am today.
Nice. So I'm curious to jump back in that first job. I know in communicating with you before we started the episode, you have done a lot with Kanban, it sounds like. So talk us a little. Let's geek out a little bit. For maybe take it in two approaches. One, like more technical. Talk a little bit about maybe the type of Kanban that you use. Was it like a 2-bin system or how, what the mechanics of it? But then also implementing it, because sometimes implementing those can be if a company's not used to it, it could be a big change, right? So curious if you met any resistance or anything like that.
Yeah. So the actual implementation of it, a mix of different things, really whatever kind of visual signal was best for that application is what we used. 2-bin system, we used a lot, but in certain scenarios, whether we were setting up a Kanban in a drawer or whatever it might be, maybe the 2 bins wasn't really the best application or best visual actual reorder, signal. So we did different things with just different, visual markers, visual indicators, and sometimes it was just simply a card hanging on a shelf, and people kind of had to familiarize themselves with what the actual numerical reorder point was. But how we set it up was we had basically 2 stages of the Kanban inside the lab where they worked. They had their kind of what we called their restocking Kanban, which might have been a 2-bin system and inside the lab. And when they depleted 1 bin, it was their signal that they needed to give the signal for someone else to restock that bin so that they weren't going to run out of the material that they needed in the lab.
Mm-hmm.
And then back on the second level, there was an external store, you might want to call it, that had maybe a week's worth of material that might have been shared by different labs within the company, and we had that. It was called our restocking kanban. So we had a similar system where we got to a certain point, and then they would have to pull that trigger or see that trigger and pull the card to reorder the materials from our external vendors. In order to make sure we didn't run out on that level. As far as meeting resistance, I think like I said, starting with these trainings and definitely having that expectation set from the top down that lean is kind of plan A and there's no plan B, and this is what we're doing, and we're going to send people through these training classes, and it became part of their jobs. Not a whole lot of necessarily resistance, maybe definitely a lot of skepticism. People, being burned in the past by delays in the customer or their suppliers getting them the materials, and having the mindset that we need to keep a whole lot of extra material on hand just in case for these scenarios. Definitely some skepticism there, but I think people quickly came to realize that it was a good thing, and they were certainly happy not to have to walk around and look for stuff all the time, and constantly run out of materials and having to shift around their priorities, and one or two complaints about people not getting in their steps for the day because they weren't running around as much, but otherwise I think people really started to realize it was a good thing and came on board with it.
It's so funny you said that. I remember back in the day when I worked at a company called FlowServe, we did this. It was kind of a material handling Kaizen event sort of thing where we mapped out this poor gal. She had to walk like, I don't know how many miles, it was like per day to this horribly inefficient, warehouse or, in a part of their factory. And it wasn't rocket science, right? It was like, all right, these parts always grab together. How about we put them together, real hard.
Right.
But we did that, and it, like, I don't know, reduced her walking by like 80%. And that comment did actually come up about like, hey man, like people could, are they going to be lazy or what, so I got to find other things to do with all that time you used to walk. Right.
Right.
Hopefully you do other value added stuff. So yeah, interesting. Good stuff. Did you ever get your reorder points or your bin sizes wrong and run out of parts due to your kanban?
We have very variable. We had very variable demands in that business because it was basically a service industry where customers were ordering us to do analysis on a sample, and things had spikes and peaks and valleys, and things had to be adjusted and changed all the time. But I kind of had to tell the people that we can only really look at what the averages are, and no matter what system you put in place to plan for your reordering, nothing's going to capture the 100%, and having months and months of a material on hand that's costing money to the company isn't the right way to go about fixing that problem. So, yeah. But as things changed, we adjusted them, and with their training, it was really great because it was a company of about 1,500 employees, and we had, I believe, 15 different departments, and just thousands and thousands of different consumables. So going through these trainings and giving people the tools and knowledge to do this stuff after it was rolled out, they really did a pretty good job maintaining that themselves. And when they had to change their reorder quantities and their points, they did that pretty autonomously. So it was a pretty cool thing.
So if you could go back to that position that you had there at that first company, and that time machine question that you've probably heard me ask, and you could go back and give yourself some advice, before you began that journey, because obviously you were brand new, right, to lean really at that point. Was there anything that you would do different if you could?
That's a great question. Maybe not try to make it so perfect from the beginning. I definitely spent a lot of time and a lot of people's time trying to collect, long periods of data, because we didn't really have like an ERP system or anything that we could really go back and look historical demand and how much of the materials we use. So a lot of it was just manual collection. Is okay, we're going to set up a kanban system for these parts right now, and we have a sheet and just kind of have people manually fill out how many they use in a day, and just a lot of manual data collection, and manually putting it into Excel to figure out what the right levels were. And
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe if I go back, I would maybe try not to make it so perfect from the start, and just maybe try to use their knowledge to get a good starting point, and then adjust from there. Even though it probably won't be 100% correct to start, probably save a lot of time
Mm-hmm.
just getting somewhere, and then adjusting, then and trying to figure it out perfectly the first time.
And in other words, stop being such an engineer, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
Yeah, no, I'm the same thing. I mean, it's hard. You want to be, you don't want to make mistakes. And I think that's why we tend to overplan sometimes, because we're scared to make mistakes. But therein lies a problem. Like when you have fear of making mistakes, then that leads to bad behavior, right? So.
And I'm certainly pretty high up in the green section of the DISC or personality training. So I'm a thinker for sure. So I can get pretty detailed and deep into my thought from time to time.
Yeah. Well, let's pivot towards that then, because I know you were peppering me with some really interesting ideas and questions over email and stuff, and which kind of brings us to your current company and where you guys are at now in your journey. So let's talk about that. And if you have any questions for me, along the way, that's cool too. I'll see what I can do, and we can open it up to the podcast world listeners, and if they have ideas, they can chime in as well.
Sure. So I have one specific question that we can get into then about something that I'm dealing with right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think just in general, with the company I'm working with right now, I think really what we're trying to do is build that culture, and just right now we're just running Kaizen events just to really get people introduced to what lean is, and we're trying to roll out a kind of a Kaizen, a wall of fame kind of thing, to just get people's ideas and inputs in, and build the culture. But from a continuous improvement journey aspect, I kind of see two sides of what people have done. And the one side is, they make this really big monumental change, and then they run Kaizen Kaizen events after that to try to make it better, make it perfect. And then there's the other event where they kind of have like this, or there's other kind of journey where it seems like people have this kind of direction that they're going into, or they have this large project where they try to break that into smaller projects, smaller Kaizen events to get where they're going. And really how do you know what the right balance of that is kind of something that I'm struggling with right now. And at what point in your lean journey is correct? Because there's huge, large scale opportunities that we have as far as everything's batch and queue, so getting to one piece flow. But in our industry, it's definitely seems to be a little bit of a challenge. So when's the right time to just really dive into some of those things?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's what you're describing is what those of us who've been practicing for a while, we've all been there. Not all, but most of the people listening to this that have been practicing for 10, 15, 20 years can all probably talk about a time where they did a lot of events, or that's my business partner John Miller. I don't know if you listened to the episode a few weeks ago, or whenever it was. All these podcasts kind of run together on me. But he back in the day, that was the consulting model, and to some extent still is for some consultants. They would just say, "Hey, hire us for 3-4 days. We'll come in and we'll make an area better, and you pay us a boatload of money." And
right.
And then if you want to, better again, bring us back in. And we'll run more events. And so lean really became largely an event-driven environment for many, many years. And then I would say, kind of when the value stream mapping kind of movement started, and led by Mr. Mike Rother and these guys with Learning to See and all those, LAI workbooks that came out back in the day. I think that also it helped a little bit in breaking from just running around doing Kaizen events for the sake of doing Kaizen events. But it also led to even more Kaizen events because you would create your current state map, right? And then you immediately turn around and create your future state map. And then what did we do? We drew Kaizen bursts or these little, these little lightning bolt things or whatever, all over the future state map and saying, oh, we got to do a SMED changeover event there. And, oh, we got to do a 5S event here. And we got to do we got standard work here and so forth. And so it also led to more Kaizen events. But what was a little bit better about that approach is that, we might call that more of we had a system level Kaizen approach, right? Like with this future state map. It's kind of like where we hope this value stream that we're mapping will be in maybe 6 months or a year or whatever it was. And so those then smaller Kaizen events, what we would call the point Kaizen, those would hopefully bring us towards that so-called ideal state.
Right.
And so I think, but then what also transformed, keep going another 5-10 years when Mike Rother wrote Toyota Kata, and you've obviously probably heard us talk a lot about scientific thinking here on the podcast because we're huge believers in it, is this is where the game changed really because Mike Rother himself stood back and said, listen, we've taught all the tools and we even have this amazing value stream map in this, but we're still missing something because we've all copied Toyota's tools, but yet we still don't have their management system. What are we missing? And then that's when they went back to seek out those unwritten or those hard to see, non-artifacts, if you will. And that's where scientific thinking comes in. And so I think the answer to your problem, in my opinion, is to it's not that you need to stop doing Kaizen events, because it's, making things better is always good. My friend Paul Akers, says, fix what bugs you, and that does work, for many organizations. But you get into, larger organizations, sometimes we can fix what bugs us and it'll make us better. But at the end of the day, sometimes we still need to have this long-term vision or this challenge, as we call it in scientific thinking, right? Toyota Kata, this challenge. Where do we want to be? And then we break it back down. And so like things like value stream mapping can work in perfect harmony with scientific thinking, right? We can still have the current state map of where we're at. We have that future state map. That's where we want to be. And then that gap, instead of creating this Kaizen newspaper with a list of things to do, which is what we typically used to do, we just say, what's one thing that we can do? Or where can we be in 2 weeks, right? And say the so-called target condition, right? And then, okay, well, let's see if we can be there in 2 weeks. That sounds good. Well, what's in our way? Well, these 4 things are in our way to that 2-week goal. Which one of those do we want to work on? Let's work on that. Well, what ideas do you have? What's your next step? And it might be, I need to run a Kaizen event. Or it might be, I got to go talk to Cindy and see what I can figure out about that one thing. Sure. And then we just start. This is the beauty of it, right? It removes all of the pressure and the anxiety from continuous improvement when we break things down this way. And we try to overcomplicate it with big checklists and big long Kaizen newspapers with all these actions and who's responsible and who's going to come back and report out on those things. This is not as effective, in my opinion, as simply breaking things down into like setting a goal, a challenge, having a long-term challenge where you want to be in a year. Where are you now? Your current condition. Where can we be in 2 weeks? What are the things in our way between where we are now and where we want to be in 2 weeks? And then start chipping away at those small obstacles. Sure.
Yeah, sure. So, as far as setting that true north of that goal, and maybe that looks like complete one piece or small batch flow all the way throughout the entire value stream of one product. Is there ever a time where that maybe you need to just run Kaizen events, do some training, spend a couple of years building your culture before the company's really ready to even start trying to chip away at that that true north, the kind of that like perfect the vision that we try to that we're trying to strive for, trying to achieve?
Yeah, I don't think so. In fact, I kind of have this kind of crazy idea. Here I am running this company, Gemba Academy, and we teach a lot of people about how to solve problems. But now I'm almost of the mind where I tell people, you know why you're struggling? Is because you try to solve so many problems. Quit trying to solve so many problems. Instead, figure out how you can learn faster. And the more you learn, the faster you can learn, the problems are going to go away. Okay. But it's kind of like we've talked a lot about here on the podcast, the so-called the process, like Nick Saban and Bill Belichick and these guys, they practice the process. They don't worry about winning the Super Bowl or winning the SEC championship or the national championship. They know that's their end goal, their challenge, right? But what they really are passionate about is are focusing on each day, each moment of that day. That's the process, right? Doing the best. And so, in essence, it's about the process. It's not about the results. The results happen. Those guys win more championships than anybody. But why? Because they focus on the process. And so I would come back to what's the process of continuous improvement. And I would dare say it's scientific thinking. And so what you want to start, perhaps an approach to take would be quit trying to jam lean down everybody's throat. And just start learning the improvement kata, learn the coaching kata, practice it, and then take it in small steps. And then the other way I explain it, I can't remember if I've said it on the podcast or not, but I explain, in my mind, it helped me understand it. Like Toyota kata or scientific thinking is like the horse, right? It's this big horse, and the horse is pulling this huge cart. And the cart is full of all these things, whether they're lean, Six Sigma, mechanical engineering, industrial engineering, all the tools that we might ever need, right? Or the principles or whatever it might be, respect for people, all the things that we talk about, those are all in that cart. So the horse sets off on this journey and we say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Horse, bring us to that point. See that point way out there in the distance? And the horse locks their eyes on it. Yeah, I got it. Go. Well, the horse is walking, everybody's good, and all of a sudden the horse stops. You're like, what's going on, horse? Horse is like, hey, man, you got this obstacle in front of me. Can't get around it without some help. Oh, good. No worries. Jump off, grab out the thing that you need out of the cart, right? Work on the obstacle, clear the obstacle, say, yeah, you're clear, horse. You see that you got your eyes back on the prize over there with that vision? Yep. Keep going. And so in this way, you can introduce these lean tools kind of as they're needed. It doesn't, because that's the other problem is you start teaching everybody about all these various tools, and that's cool. And it's always good to know what these tools are, but, teach someone what a hammer is, then everything looks like a nail, Sure. So I've talked to a lot of really experienced lean folks who have come to the conclusion that scientific thinking in and of itself, used properly, is the best enabler to lean success that ever existed, because it's not about the tools. It's not about the things that we want to do. It's about where do we want to be, what's in our way. And when we need to clear out that obstacle that's in our way, that's when the tools come in. Right. And so like here at Gemba Academy, that's our whole thing is like, yeah, we got 1,000 videos, but it's not about the videos. It's about the things that you need to learn to get where you want to be. So where do you want to be? And a lot of people don't know where they want to be. And that therein lies really the root cause of many problems is they don't have a challenge. They don't really know where they want to be. And then if they do, sometimes they don't even know where they're at, which sounds kind of crazy. But, if I went out to your factory or your Gemba and I walked up to anybody and I said, hey, how's it going? Good. I'm Ron. Hey, how's it going? Hey, how's it going today? Oh, it's going pretty good. So I don't know if you were talking about your work as like a game, like a sports game, like a football game, basketball game. What would you say? Are you winning or are you losing right now? And just stop and look at them. And they'll all of a sudden, many of them will have like a panic look on their face and be like, I really have no idea, if I'm winning or losing right now. Right. And so this is real basic things like, visual management, let's start kind of popping up. It's a natural countermeasure to not knowing if you're winning or losing. Right. But again, we're always moving with a purpose. So yeah, that's really my best advice is really dive in. Have you done anything with Toyota Kata or scientific thinking?
I actually have not yet. It's just being so new in my journey. I've been really just trying to, grasp and understand all the different tools and concepts
Yeah.
within Lean. I actually do have the book, Toyota Kata. It's on my reading list, but maybe I'll have to bump that more closer to the top of the list.
Yeah, no, I would say that, I've been practicing Lean for over 20 years. And when I finally opened my mind and my heart to it, a few years ago, it fundamentally changed the way that I approach my work. It changed really not just my work, but just like my life, because it helps even with my children and whatnot, like daughter's stressed out about the ACT, okay, well, that's a challenge. Where are you now? Well, I took the pre-ACT and I got XYZ. Okay. And then we start breaking that down, and then it just removes anxiety, right? And we start taking things in chunks I would encourage you. The Toyota Kata book is good, the original one, the red book. But if Mike Rother, the author, were talking to you, and there's only one of the books that he's written that he would encourage you to read. It's the Toyota Kata Action Guide. I would encourage you to pick that one up if you're going to read just one of them. It's okay. That would be the one Mike would want you to read. I've heard him say it, so that's how I know. and he told me the same thing. So yeah, the Toyota Kata Practice Guide or Action Guide. I always call it Practice Guide, but it's the Action Guide. I think that would be the best one to serve you. And
awesome.
Yeah,
I'll definitely do that.
Yeah, but I don't mean to discourage you about learning the tools, because we all have to know the tools, right? The tools are important, but tools in and of themselves aren't the they're not the answer. You got to know how to think. You got to know how to kind of navigate through the journey, and then you bring out the tools when they're needed, as they're needed.
Sure. So I have a couple of more specific questions for you here. I'm not sure how much experience you might have. I'm sure you do from time to time in your career with the electronics industry.
I worked at Motorola and Nokia, built a lot of cell phones, man.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, perfect. So,
yeah.
Did you guys build the actual boards that go into
yeah, man. I saw your email, SMT. I was a Fuji guy, and oh my gosh, yeah, I built a lot. I did a lot of screen printing, design of experiments, and man, could talk to you all day. Reflow oven profiles. Oh man. Yeah.
That's awesome. So it seems like so we build the board. So we build these industrial automation, industrial networking products, and they all have these boards inside of them, and we manufacture the circuit boards. And it just seems like in service mount we always had the mindset, or in the past we bought these machines that are the most expensive, the fastest, that can do things in the biggest batch sizes possible with super long changeover times, and it's exactly opposite of where we want to go with maybe buying more machines that are not as expensive, that maybe are more flexible, but with your experience with surface mount, is what is the ideal state? Is one piece flow or small batch size is something that's achievable, or does it require maybe new thinking on the equipment we purchase, or where have you gone with that?
Well, I mean, I can only speak for kind of how we approach things back in the day, and it's been many, many years since I built cell phones, but we had an assembly line, right? So we might have two sides of the circuit board, and started with a screen flow machine, screen printing machine, and put the solder paste down, and then it would go to 2 or 3 chip shooters or whatever it might be to put on the small parts, and then maybe a larger pick and place type machine for some of the bigger parts, and then it goes through a reflow oven. So you could argue that in a way that's kind of it is flow. It is flowing. And we had goals, 300 an hour or whatever it might be, but we were making the same thing, right? For days on end. So in that way, it was easier, right? And we did have to balance, and obviously, as balancing the time of each machine is really important, and optimizing how the machine picks and places, and that's an art in and of itself, right?
Sure.
But where you can get in trouble is machines stop or run out of parts or whatever. Well, then flow has stopped, right? And now you're no longer at your cadence. So that minimizing those stoppages when you're running kind of in a mass production mindset like that. So I don't know if that's your environment or not, but
yeah, we manufacture thousands of different types of boards. So there is a changeover aspect to it, and it is very lengthy. And we just, like I said, we have these machines that make things fast in very large batches. So the mindset is how can we build the biggest batch possible, but which might be fine with the way things are set up now, and where everything's batch and queue, and there's a large amount of inventory in between each process step. But if we wanted to move towards maybe this ideal state where we are building to a customer order and not to a sales forecast, and a customer order comes in for 30, and we 30 go through our service mount, and then those same 30 go through our PTH, and the same 30 get assembled and encased into their final product and shipped out the door, all in one flow without stopping, without batching and queuing in between.
Yeah.
And with the just thousands of different products and boards that we built, that would be the challenge.
Yeah, well, and it's obviously a really big question, but you also, and this is where the leadership of your company comes in and decision making. Like, do you really want to produce 1,000 different products, or you know what I mean? Or do you want to build 5 products and corner the market on those 5 products? Which is more advantageous, right, from a business perspective. But obviously that's a leadership and strategic question more than it is a tactical question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So my last question is, something that I've done already and struggle a little bit with is, maybe trying to get the one-piece flow all the way through is boiling the ocean right now. But let's start with just our final assembly cells, where we have our board, and we have all the products, or all the parts that need to go into the final assembly. How do we make that flow one piece at a time? And it's more like really a value stream mapping question and breaking it down, because even within one of our final product assembly might make 1,000 different variations of final products. And when you have this just one final assembly cell that has hundreds of different products with slight variations and maybe slight variations in assembly steps as well, like this one might get this and this one might get that, and most of them are about the same, but there's just slight variations here and there, and all of them obviously have different customer demands, and even products that are in the same product family, step for step follow the same thing, might have different cycle times based on how big it is. If you're making an HMI, a display, a small display might take a small 4-inch display might take 4 minutes to assemble, where a large display might take 15 minutes to assemble. So when you're trying to take this whole cell and transform it into a lean production cell with one piece flow, and you have all these different variations, how do you start? How do you map that out? How do you even get to the current state? Do you need to?
It's obviously a daunting challenge, especially with such a high mix, but I think I would encourage you to start with one. Start with one product and don't overthink it. Start with one product that, maybe it's a more common product that, if there's something that maybe you assemble more than other things, start with that one. And then literally just what are the steps to assembling this product? Write them out on a flip chart, and time them a few times, pull out your industrial engineering, skills, and just start understanding the manual cycle time. If there's any automatic cycle time, just start to really understand the steps and how much time they take. And then, obviously we would like to be able to calculate like attack time, based on the demand of whatever product that you're faced with and how much time we have available. If we know those two things, then we can calculate attack time, right? And then if we know that, let's say, that product there takes on average 4 minutes to assemble, Well, there we know our cycle time, right? So if you know your takt time and you know your manual cycle time, from there you can calculate your crew size. Well, today we need 2 people. And if we have 2 people, here's a little playbook. We used to call them mixed model playbooks, and it's a matrix, and it's standard work, right? It's like, here's the steps for assembling this particular widget. And if you have 2 people, person 1 does this and person 2 does this. If the demand is such that requires a crew size of 4 people, now here's how that work is broken up, right? So, but it all begins with, just beginning to understand, what's it take to in a perfect world to assemble this particular product. And you can't get intimidated by the fact that you got thousands of them. Deal with it. Eventually, you can figure out maybe there's similarities. I know we got 1,000 of them, but when we really look at it, maybe there's 20 different main types of things that we do. Right.
Sure.
And then you can start to kind of categorize, and you can still fine tune them and accordingly, because they are going to have some differences, I'm sure. But there's a lot of high mix producers out there who still practice lean, right? And so you can too. But I would encourage you to start with 1, and just see what you can learn, right?
Sure.
Once you read the Toyota Kata practice guide or action guide, then you'll be able to figure out, let's start running some experiments and see what we learn, right? And because that's what true lean is. It's this learning journey, and the better you get at learning and not being afraid of technically, I only want to use the word failing, but like an experiment didn't work out like you thought it would, right? Great. We learned, even if something does work out like you thought it would, great. You learn, you confirm what you thought. So that's what it's all about, right? It's about kind of setting our eyes on something. We often make predictions, like, what's your next step, Tyler? I'm going to do this. What do you think's going to happen? This. Come back. Hey, Tyler, what was your last step? This. What did you think was going to happen? This. What actually happened? This. What did you learn? That's that cycle, right? That's this routine, this dance that we want to constantly get in, whether it's one-piece flow or setting up the chip shooter or the refill oven. I would experiment with a different profile. What do you think's going to happen? This. What actually happened? This. What did you learn? So you'll find yourself, it's the same questions, you just kind of repeat ad nauseum,
Right.
But it's constant learning.
So would you potentially just even set up, a separate, future state value stream within that one final assembly cell, and then, just, start with that, and then, kind of let that run separately whenever that product comes in, and then try to incorporate other products into it as time goes on?
Yeah, it's kind of what you're describing sounds similar to what we would call like a model cell. This is very typical. You build a temporary area over where you're experimenting, right? And you're trying things out. And it can be rough and dirty. It can be pieces of plywood, kind of propped up on sawhorses, and we're just trying to figure things out, whether the cell flows counterclockwise, all this kind of fancy stuff. These are lean technical things that we can get into at that point.
Right.
But yeah, but running experiments, and see what you can learn. And like you said, don't try to be perfect. Earlier on in the episode, right? Don't let perfect get in the way of better, and just iterate and experiment and learn. That's the best advice I can give you.
Sure. Yeah, that's good advice. Thanks, Ron.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, gosh, we've talked for 40 minutes. That was fun.
Wow. 40 minutes already, huh?
Yeah. So last question I have for you, obviously you're think it's safe to say a little bit younger than many of the guests that I have on. So kind of would you consider yourself a millennial, I guess?
Yeah, I'm 25. So
okay.
Yeah, definitely in the millennial,
okay.
in the millennial area.
So what do you think of this whole lean movement, like within your demographic there of folks, around your age? Is there other folks interested in this type of thing or what? What do you think?
That's a great question. As far as, other folks, I haven't met too many people in my age group that are, that I can, or necessarily my peers in lean. I'm sure they're out there. But I'd like to think that my age group would certainly embrace this kind of journey, and I think we're definitely open to change. So yeah, I think it's I think with my generation, I think there's good things to come with lean and continuous improvement for sure.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, hey man, it's been fun chatting with you. Last piece of advice I would give you is to definitely get out to some conferences, over the next few years if you can. AME is the big monster, but like Katacon is a great one. And, we talk about them quite a bit here on the podcast, but the more you can get out and network and meet other practitioners and just connect with folks, LinkedIn, and I don't know if there's any Snapchat, lean things for you. I don't know. I don't that kind of stuff, but LinkedIn is where we all live, There's some Twitter people out there too, but in fact, Mike Rother's on Twitter now. So
yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. I've connected with a few people who are on the show just to start making some connections with those who are fellow lean thinkers. But
that's great. Well, so if you're a millennial and you're listening, you need to reach out to Tyler and let him know he's not alone.
Absolutely.
All right. Hey, what's the best way, speaking of reaching out to you, for folks to connect with you, Tyler?
Yeah, probably LinkedIn would be the best way to connect with me.
And spell your full name and last name.
First name is Tyler, Tyler. Last name is Athey, Athey.
Okay, cool. And we'll put it in the show notes. This will be episode 262. So gembapodcast.com. Look for 262, and we'll link to Tyler. Are you on Snapchat? Tell the truth, man.
I am on Snapchat.
I do it. I do it. I can't figure it out, man. My kids are on it, and I'm like, what is that? Like, what do you do with that? Yeah, it's all good. All right, man. Well, hey, have a great day. Thanks for coming on, and keep learning, man. Keep learning, okay?
Will do. Thanks for having me, Ron.
All right. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Gemba Academy podcast. Now, we invite you to take a no-strings-attached, fully functional test drive of GembaAcademy.com. Gain immediate access to more than 1,000 Lean and Six Sigma learning resources, all free of charge, at GembaAcademy.com.